All right, hey guys, welcome to another Sunday stream. How's it going, Zandhog? I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Is that right? Hey, Mr. Heath. And we just have a visitor. He just jumped up in my lap. Hey, what's up, Zach? All right. This guy is, he's being very needy at the moment, so we'll see what kind of interruptions that he causes for us today. Well, it's good to see everybody back. Just going to jump right into it and get started today. So we're still working on Allie. And yesterday, all right, well, good to know. So yesterday, I did a little bit of streaming. I'm still waiting on the dwarves from Atlantis Miniatures to arrive. And so until they do, I don't really have anything to paint. I've been working on assembling the project that's going to be after that. But in terms of painting, I only am working on Allie here. So I decided to do a little stream yesterday to get some work done on her. I'm just noticing there seems to be something with her eyebrow. I think I might have nicked her face when I was working on the hair yesterday. But so what we did yesterday was we worked on the leather. So her leather belts, the straps around her legs, holsters. We also did her hair. And I opted to not go super bright highlighting on the hair because that tends to be something you get when the hair is really clean and therefore very shiny. But I don't really necessarily think of her as having super clean hair at the moment. So I don't think her hair is going to be really, really highly reflective. So I went with a little bit more subtlety with the highlighting. And I also base coated some of the areas of the green shirt in a lighter green. I don't really want the final shirt to be this light green color, but I'm going to go over it with the darker green again, and we're going to tie it all together, start to darken that back up to the other color. But the fact that we underpainted that is going to make those areas a little brighter, which is going to help create some highlighting and layering. So that's where I'm going to start with today. I'm going to do lots of glazing layers. We're going to do some shadowing. Just as kind of a foreshadow, I'm eventually going to put her on this plinth. This is a resin plinth from Dragon Forge Designs. Is that the full name of the company? Dragon Forge Designs, I think. I'm really impressed with their resin plinths. They come out with very, very flat bottoms. Like all the ones I've gotten sit very flat. They don't require any like smoothing out. And I'm guessing the molds, he just pours them in this way, and this is the top of the mold. So there's no seams ever on these, and so I've never noticed any warping. They seem to be really, really, really nice. I put one of these on the Wolf, Wolf and Prowler, the Confrontation miniature that has the Koi banner behind him. I used this exact plinth for him, and it really came out nice. You paint it black, it looks fantastic. So she's going to be, you can kind of see from above, fits her just about perfectly. I wouldn't necessarily normally you wouldn't need a plinth for her, but if you kind of look, she has a very rough base at the bottom, which is not totally level. And so what I want to do is I want to sticker on the plinth, and I'm going to kind of fill in the gap and try to do a little bit of a transition from the terrain in her base up on top of the plinth. So that's what we'll be doing down the line. What's up, Pack Team? So yeah, blues. You probably asked before you heard it on the video, but yeah, that's the same one that the Wolf and Prowler was on. So yeah, it's really the only negative thing I can say about Dragon Forge. The only negative thing I'll say is he's so popular with selling his bases that it can take like months to get your stuff from him. I think it took 2 or 3 months when I placed an order to get like a dozen of these plinths. That's not a knock on the business. He's just a one-man operation, and he's very popular. He makes a lot of good bases, and he's in high demand, and he's the sculptor and the caster and the shipper, and he does all the work himself. So it's really tough for him to keep up with his orders. How's everybody's day been so far? Sometimes I just do this with pure water. I'm actually just messing around today. I'm going to add a little bit of thinner, a little bit of matte medium, and then water it down. What are you going to do, Zach, when you actually finish Tiamat? What kind of celebration are you going to have? You're going to cry? It'll be like a prisoner being let out of, from the dungeon after many years of hardships. See how that works. That is always a relief, getting the taxes done. Hopefully you got a big refund. Or maybe not. Maybe if you're one of those people that likes to be a better planner. Invest your money along the way instead of letting Uncle Sam get it for free from you for a year. One of the reasons I added the thinner and the mixing medium this time instead of just doing water glazes is that I've never glazed with this particular color before. And each different paint color can be a little different when it comes to glazing, just the way the pigments are. So sometimes you can get ones that end up more chalky or just aren't as good at doing it. And I didn't want to risk messing her up, so adding some of the thinner and the mixing medium should keep the pigments together a little nicer, a little more without interfering with my glazing. most of the Scale 75 are pretty good. There was one green I worked on the Malifaux commission. The Coryphée, one of the ones with the big blades on her hands. The one in the green dress. That color did not cooperate with me on the glazing process, so it's a little patchy, a little more patchy than I would like. The color was good, but the paint itself just didn't cooperate, and I didn't really realize it in time. Well, that's good to hear, Mr. Heath. You're gonna take the missus out for a fun date night or something with them, with the refund? Mr. Heath's wondering what we did on our weekend. Myself, I was able to do some paint streaming yesterday. Did a little bit of work on assembling Redemptor Dreadnought for Pact Team. It's my next commission after the Atlantis Miniature Dwarves. And then I was going to do some work preparing the presentation I have to do next week in San Diego. But instead, my wife and I played some board games and just hung out some. So I took the evening off, but I'll have to be doing that tonight. Which reminds me, I should mention this again at the end of the stream, but there will be no Saturday stream from me next week because of my trip. And probably no stream during the week either, so might be a little bit before you see me again. Sounds like a good weekend, Pack Team. Did my normal Sunday rock climbing today. Didn't last quite as long as usual. We pushed it really, really hard on Friday. We were both pretty tired today. And then they just set a bunch of new routes in one of the rooms for a upcoming climbing competition. And a lot of times for the climbing competition, the routes are actually a little bit harder than what we're used to for the same rating scale. And we foolishly tried to warm up on some routes that were a little harder than what you'd want to warm up on, and we sort of burned ourselves out a little early today. I can try moving the microphone a little closer. Does that help? Is it better now? Just let me know. I can see if there's a... Okay, thanks. I can see if I can turn up the master volume a little bit, but I also tend to probably speak lower. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Jeff Dunham, the comedian who the ventriloquist. He's got dummies like Peanut and things like that. In one of his comedy specials, they have the signers there who are doing the sign language for the hearing impaired. And he has one of his dummies just start kind of messing with him, where he has the puppet, pretending to talk, and he's not actually saying anything, and so the signer is just sitting there not signing anything and pretending to laugh and all that stuff. I was just thinking I could just start moving my mouth and make it seem like I'm talking and nobody can actually hear anything. I think he actually made a joke about that, Pack Team, during that same thing, saying about what it would be like if you took a blind person to see a magician. And he has somebody next to him and he's explaining everything that happened. He's like, he just made the bird disappear. Like it was there and then it was gone. It was amazing. But of course the person can't see anything. So I'm still debating about, I think I'm going to end up painting her boots black. But I'm still debating about what to do with her gloves. If I want the gloves to be black to sort of bring the black from the boots up into the model, or if I want them to be more brown to match the other leather. I'm sort of leaning towards black for her gloves. At least I think I might do that as a... he might have, although it might have been the same ventriloquist. Jeff Dunham has been around since I was a kid. I remember seeing him on like VH1 Stand-Up Spotlight, and he had his own show for a while there. It's getting closer back to the green I'm looking for. I'm going to start focusing on the transition areas between the two colors. I almost started breaking my own rule there. This is the darker green, and I was taking my brush in the direction of the lighter green, which is going to mess up the attempt to try to transition between the two colors. So I want to pull my brush from the lighter green area into the darker green area. Pull the pigment in that direction. Getting there. Well, she's probably right. Now, one thing that can start to happen when you do glazing, when you do a bunch of layers, especially if you start mixing additives into the paint, like the mixing medium or other thinners or just other things into the paint, and you start going over it again, time and again, you can actually start to get a little bit more glossy finish than what the paint would normally dry at. Like I can tell that this is definitely glossier than the normal scale finish. But I always finish all my models off with Testors Dull Coat anyway, so I don't worry about that so much. But there are certain painters that worry a lot about the final finish that they get from all the different techniques they apply, because they don't like to put varnish on their model if they're doing a display piece. I just like the way that Testors Dull Coat, somehow there's something about it that when you apply it, it just kind of ties everything together. I can't really explain it, but when I look at models side by side, where they basically are painted the same, but one has had the tester's dull coat applied to it and one hasn't. The one with the dull coat on it, just somehow everything seems to be more harmonized. Alright, getting really close to being done with this part. Then I'll do some shading on the shirt. Anybody see the new Black Panther movie? I haven't yet, but it's getting really good reviews. Wondering if any of you guys have seen it, what you thought about it. Yeah, I don't tend to run out to see movies when they first get released. We kind of take our time. A lot of times we don't end up seeing them until they come out on Redbox, but it's kind of nice to not have to fight the crowds. Go when they've died down some and get a good seat. Kind of funny. We don't tend to go to the movies all that often. Watch a lot more stuff at home. Around Christmas time, we usually get a bunch of gift cards from family members for movies. It's part of stocking stuffers and things like that. And I think usually we get to the next Christmas and we still haven't finished off all of the gift cards from the previous Christmas. All right, I'm going to call that part done. We'll do some shading. I'm just sort of trusting that there's these three colors that are called SS Camo Medium Green, Camo Light Green, and Camo Dark Green, that they sort of work together. Again, I'm just putting these new paints through their paces, so I'm going to trust that this will work well as a shade. Just add a drop or two of the other stuff too. Yeah, Zach, that we have a few of those theaters around here too, but the ones that do the pick your seats aren't the closest theaters to us. So we could certainly do that, but I know a lot of times for us, that when we do go to movies, it's usually not a big pre-planned event. It kind of just happens. Just get home from work one day or something and be like, you want to go to a movie? Grab some dinner. I need to switch to a smaller brush for cool. Do what you have to, man. Just glad you guys are here. A lot of times the Twitch streams that I do end up listening to, I'm listening to at work. I just kind of have them up on the background. And while I'm doing a lot of other stuff, so I'm usually always have my eyeballs on the screen. Just using it as an alternative to listening to the radio or the playlist I've heard a million times. I enjoyed the new Thor too. The guy who directed that, Taki, I can't remember his name off the hand, but he was in What We Do in the Shadows, which I think that movie is hilarious. It's one of those mockumentary. It's like a bunch of vampires living in New Zealand, and they're all flatmates, and the camera crew gets embedded with them to sort of document their life. It's pretty humorous. I think he was one of the writers, maybe the director for that movie too. But yeah, I enjoyed the comedy. I've not always been a big Thor fan, but I thought that movie was really entertaining, and especially that big rock guy and his little sidekick, who that director actually did the voice for, the big rock dude. But yeah, I enjoyed that. So I do listen to podcasts. A lot of times I listen to ones based on shows. So some podcasts for like Game of Thrones, or I like the insider podcasts for shows like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, things like that, where you listen to the directors and writers talk about the process, and I tend to listen to those. generally save my podcasts for when I'm driving. I do a lot of my work from home, so depending on the week, I don't always do a ton of driving, so I don't get through podcasts all that quickly. Starting to get some definition of these shadows. Probably add a little bit of purple here in a minute to start deepening the shadows. I just love to add purple to shade greens or browns. Just something about it makes me happy. It's like my Bob Ross moment of zen. Hey, what's up, Genuine Vision? Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. I just, without spoiling too much, yeah, the What We Do in the Shadows movie, one of the very first scenes when they're first filming them is they're talking about flat responsibilities, and they have like a chart of like who has to do the dishes and who's supposed to do the laundry and all that stuff, and they're sitting there arguing about whose responsibility it is and how long it's been since one guy actually did his job. It's just so funny to watch this mundane thing between roommates, but all the roommates are hundreds of years old vampires. I also really like the pack of werewolves that they meet. It's called What We Do in the Shadows. Definitely worth giving a shot. Especially if you like those kind of dry, things like This Is Spinal Tap or Best in Show, Waiting for... What's that one where it's like the local people putting on a play? The title's a play on Waiting for Godot, but I don't remember the actual title of it. Waiting for Guffman? That's a good question. I'm not sure where it's available right now. I saw it in the theater, and then I saw it again on one of the movie channels, but it's got Jermaine Clement. What We Do in the Shadows has Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords in it. He's one of the vampires. At the risk of being cliche, however, my favorite movie, Shawshank Redemption. I know that's probably a bit of an obvious choice for a lot of people. It makes all sorts of lists, like as one of the best movies of all time, but I love that movie. I agree. You don't have to defend your favorite movie. Or you shouldn't have to. We're getting close on this. I'm pretty happy with how it's coming out. Probably just a couple more passes. There was a gamer, I guess he still lives in the area, but from around here. He was asking me one day, how do you get really smooth blends and how do you achieve the effects that you do? And I was kind of explaining, my painting process to him. And after a while, he just kind of looks at me and he goes, so you mean to tell me that you paint an area and then you paint the same area again and then you paint the same area again and you just keep doing that over and over again? I'm like, yeah, I guess that's a very simplistic way of describing it. And he just kind of shakes his head and walks away. It's like, well. I think he was hoping I would have some secret about how to do everything by just applying one, like a coat of paint and a wash or something. There's nothing wrong with that, but so I will say one thing for Twilight Pact Team. You guys probably know Mystery Science Theater 3000. The old show. They make fun of movies. I know they've redone it on Netflix. It's not nearly as good, but so Mike and then the guy who did the voice of Crow and the guy who did the voice of Tom Servo, they have a company called Riff Tracks, where they make essentially Mystery Science Theater 3000 commentary over all like more modern movies. And the riff tracks of the Twilight movie is like the funniest of the riff tracks / Mystery Science Theater 3000 that I've ever seen. I will watch Twilight any day of the week you want to if we can put the riff tracks over it, because it is fantastic. I won't watch it without the riff tracks, but you want to put the riff tracks on it, I'll watch that movie as many times as you want. All right, it's still drying a little bit, but let's see what we got here. So glazing over it, I muted down that lighter green. We've got the darker shadows, a little bit of purple glazed into the shadows. So we've got some depth and some color transitions. So I think I'm pretty happy with her shirt. Got to do some work on the buttons, but I'm happy for now. Are you wanting to get together and watch riff tracks on Thursday? Is that what you're saying? Or are you wanting to? Are you wondering about a stream on Thursday? All right, buddy. It was good for you. Good to have you here today, and thanks for stopping by. Tell the wife I said hello, and enjoy the rest of your day, man. Well, unfortunately, I'm traveling for work the second half of this week, so I won't be able to do that, but maybe another time. But I can't recommend the riff tracks Twilight enough. It's really hilarious. I also love it because the main character is from Arizona. So a little bit of the movie takes place kind of in my backyard. But what's funny is one of the lines that they say over the movie that they add is as they're leaving Arizona, they're like saying goodbye to everything. You know, goodbye cactus, goodbye, all these things. And then goodbye needlessly confusing decision not to observe daylight savings time. That one always kills me. Funny is I'm originally from Indiana. I've lived most of my life in Arizona, but I'm originally from Indiana. And the only two states that either completely or at least partially don't observe daylight savings time are Arizona and Indiana. So just by nature, I just don't understand all of your guys' obsession with changing the clock twice a year. Just leave it alone. That's also by way of a warning that when we hit daylight savings time, the times of my streams will likely change for you guys. So I'm just kind of looking. like it. So Pack Team might already be gone, but he sent me this picture the other day. Apparently the guns that she's holding are a specific type of firearm, and this is the picture of what they look like in real life. And so he gave me a hard time because I said I was just going to paint the guns black, and he said that you can't do that. You have to pay respect to the history of the firearm. So I'm going to use that as inspiration to try to paint these in a fairly realistic way. I'm probably still going to base coat them black, but then I'll go back and do something else. Do other countries switch for daylight savings time, or is it just something the United States does? I don't really know the answer to that question. I'm sure you're right too. I'm sure there are all black versions of these guns. It's even possible that they're not actually the exact model of gun. They're pretty small, so I don't know. There might be some things, but I kind of like the color pattern on that gun, so I'll probably try get as close as I can. I've said it a couple times, I kind of like the idea we're working on this model together. I've asked some opinions a few times, tried to take those into consideration while I'm working on her. So if one of the regular viewers wants to see the guns painted up in a certain way, and I think it'll look good, then I'm happy to give it a shot. I also feel like I got nixed on the idea of black gloves. So it's the rest of the entire world except Arizona and part of Indiana. So we just feel the need to thumb our nose at everyone else on the planet. Gotcha. That sounds about right for a lot of the people in this who run this state. Wow. I was commenting on this before. When I streamed yesterday, I had somebody from Denmark on here. So I have somebody from Korea and somebody from Sweden watching. That's awesome. I love how technology is letting us, meet new people and enjoy the hobby with people from all across the globe. And when I started painting miniatures and playing miniatures way back in the late 90s, it really wasn't that way. I mean, the internet was around, but it wasn't anything to the extent we have now. So it was really just the people who lived nearby who went to the same game store as you, and maybe people you met at conventions. But it's really cool that we can share our passion together. That sure does look like that gun. I think he's spot on. Alright, I think the first part I'm going to do is the bright silver. Now, I don't paint with metallics, and I don't even own any metallics, so I'm going to need to find something that will work well for that. I think I'm going to try basing with this rainy gray. It's like a warmer gray. And then go a little bit lighter with it. How did you survive the Super Bowl, Heath? Did you just hunker down in your house and let it all blow over?
Got some World Cup talk going on in the chat. Have you always been interested in soccer, Heath, or is this just something that's been more of a more recent interest? I should say football. Cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up being a big fan of American football. So I grew up in Indiana. Kind of became aware of the Colts at a pretty young age. I moved to Arizona in '88, which was the same year that the Cardinals moved from St. Louis to Arizona. So I've been here the same like the time the Cardinals have. So I've been kind of a fan of them for the whole time, and grew up. I played football. I coached football. When I was in high school, I was one of the coaches on the Pop Warner football team. It's like Pee Wee football. And I grew up, watched a lot of basketball and the Phoenix Suns, things like that. But I don't know, the last 5 years or something, I've just been getting way, way more into hockey. That's about the only sport I really pay attention to anymore, and even then it's still really just the local team, but I've just been really enjoying that game, and I kind of lost interest in most of the other sports I used to watch or be involved in. I also I was a wrestler in junior high and high school. Now I just watch the occasional Arizona Coyotes hockey game, do my rock climbing. Watch major things like World Series or something, but yeah, I can imagine. Close up to our great northern neighbors, where hockey is the religion, right? All right, I'm going to add a little bit of white to this. Just do a little highlighting. Probably go back at the end after I do the rest of the gun. Add a few really extreme, like bright spots where the sun is glinting off the polished metal. But I think I'm going to wait till I do the other colors and get a sense for where I think they might look best. go back up and clean up a few spots before applying the next color. So Heath, have you done any more mini paintings since that one day you were painting with your D&D group? Just gonna do the wood handle real fast. Oh, apparently I missed. Just realized I guess, is that the release chamber, wherever the bullet would come out of? It's the silver. I guess not really the bullet, the casing, right? Probably a pretty poor gun design if that's where the bullet exited. So painting wood grain, I actually have there's a video on my Twitch channel. It's on the front page of it. So it wasn't one of my streams, but it was a video I did for the wood bases on a fisherman team I painted. So that shows one technique for doing them. I used kind of a similar technique on the wood bases for the Malifaux team, but there I didn't do so much glazing over because I didn't want it to, I was using lighter colors. It's kind of hard to verbally describe how to do wood grain. But the basic idea I can do a demo on the top of this plinth because I'm just going to glue something to it later. Let that dry for a second. So it's best if you have a brush with a really nice point. For some of it. Of course, it's drying very slowly. We'll give it a minute. I'll show you two different ways to generate some believable wood grain. Still wet. All right, now that I've got this wood, the wood grip on the handle, like it's not really true, this isn't really true like wood grain. I just want to indicate some texture. I'm going to do some stippling. Not sure if this is light enough. We'll see. Yeah, I think this is going to work well. I'll show it a close up in a second. See, Mr. Heath. Thanks. I'll show the wood grain on here if you want to come back and watch the video later. I will go ahead and show that. Alright, so I think that's the best I can get to show you. But just a little stippling on there just suggests some of that texture. Just subtle. Alright, in fact, I think there's still one wet spot, but so there's two ways that I will add grain texture to something. So after it's base coated, probably the more common way I do it is I take my whatever base coat I use, I create a lighter mixture of it, sort of like the two grays that we had. And I just sort of start painting lines. But I don't want my lines to be straight. Right? I want it to be, suggest some different motion within the wood. And I specifically will start to carve out like spots where maybe some knots would be. And I'll go ahead and put those, like color them in solid with the lighter color, have the lines kind of move around them, and those be sort of a guiding spot for the texture. Then I'll go back in with a darker color. I wouldn't necessarily use black for this, unless it's a really dark wood, but if it's a lighter wood, I would use brown, but I don't have any brown mixed up. I'm just going to use black. So I'd start off by coloring in the the knots. And then now we have the lighter grain with the medium background. I would just start suggesting some darker grain that kind of moves along with the lighter grain. And that's the basic idea. So I'll do that a lot of times with wood grain. You can also then do like a glaze over top. To get some tone into the wood. Do a few coats of that until you're happy with the color. Another option is to take a little bit bigger brush, get some of that wood grain color on there, get most of the paint off of it, and kind of moving from the side, kind of pull down. And it creates a really rough surface texture, which you can then go back in and pick out spots where you think knots would be forming. And again, sort of use those to guide your darker grain lines. You just kind of put them wherever. And then this is a really good technique to then do, multiple passes of a glaze over top to start getting those in. This is the technique that I show on my fisherman bases that you can see on my Twitch channel or my YouTube channel. And then I used more this technique, except for not with the overglazing, but this other technique was what I did on the more recent bases. And the reason I didn't do it on those is I was making each plank sort of slight variations of different colors. I didn't want to do like a big wash over the top of all of them because I wanted to keep the color more controlled. All right, so now I need more of a gunmetal gray. Let's start with this. This is another warm gray. It's very much darker. It's called petroleum gray. It's kind of a brownish gray. Just realized I'm coloring in a part that looks black on the... There's also a black spot on the handle. I don't know why I didn't notice until just now. gonna lighten this. I think I'm gonna leave some of this behind because I think I might use it to do a little of shading on the bright silver part. I'm gonna use the same color I used to highlight the silver to tone this part down a little bit, keep the colors unified. This might be too light. Maybe not. I think it'll be okay once it dries. I've been watching the documentary on Netflix about something like The Toys That Made Us, I think is what it's called. It's been interesting. It's about things like Star Wars toys and Barbie and all of that kind of stuff. It's the history behind the toys. It's worth checking out. I've also been finally catching up on Black Mirror. It first got released on Netflix. We tried to watch it. And of course, first thing we watched was the infamous pig episode. And that we didn't really watch too much after that. And then we kept being told by people to check it out again, and so we've been watching season 3 and 4. putting a few brighter glinty spots on the shiny metal. Ah, Zach, this thing refuses to die. And in that way, he is a great D&D villain. Were you just trying to varnish him? What were you trying to finish up with the airbrush? Luckily her hand is covering up the spot where I would need to paint black, so that's good. So the five-headed dragon wasn't enough. You had to also build this gigantic wood clock backing base for it. On top of the base he already comes with, it's like mammoth. It's dedication, man. I'm just doing a little glazing some of that really watered down base coat for the darker gray parts, just to create some shadows on the gun, help ease a little bit of the transitions, tie everything together a little bit. So now that you've finished one dragon, are you going to start working on the one that Baphometus sent you? I know you're eager to jump into another big project, right? All right. That's cool. Well, I'm going to be ending the stream here. I'm going to show some close-ups of some of the things I finished today. If you got any last-minute questions or comments, just let me know. I'll make sure I don't hang up before you guys get a chance to catch up to the stream and post them. I think Pack Team will be proud. And we also finished the shirt during today's stream. I still got to do the buttons, and I also might come and back and hit the very edges of the shirt with a little bit of highlighting just to pick out the highest raised edges, but here she is after session, what did I say, this is session 7 or 8, so about 15 hours in, getting close. Mostly the gloves and the boots and then some buckles and things like that to finish, and then onto the base and put her on her plinth. Cool. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Zandhog. Yeah, the boots, like I said, the boots and the gloves, and then like belt buckles and things that I haven't done. And there's some buckles on her straps. And there's buttons on her shirt that I should probably do something with. Probably do them in like a dark gray. I don't want them to really pop out too much. It's kind of an odd choice. The sculptor opted to sculpt buttons, but he actually sculpted them on both sides of the shirt, as opposed to putting little divots for holes. So if I'd caught that earlier, I probably would have cut off the buttons on one of the side, but yeah, it is what it is. She's been really fun to paint. I can't wait till I can do my next 75mm scale model. She's been really quite a treat. But the tattoo and the text on the back. So the tattoo was, I think, the second episode with her. It's titled something like Working on Skin. The text on the back was 2 episodes ago, I believe. So it would have been the one from last Sunday, I think. So that's a good point. Yeah, they might be snap buttons. So one snaps into the other. That's a very good point. That's probably what they are. Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. It makes it a lot more fun to paint when I have people to paint with. So it's been fun. Again, I won't be able to stream next weekend. I will definitely stream in 2 weeks from today. and then maybe hopefully sometime between then and now. But I'll keep you posted. Just follow me on Twitter. It's at Gorilla Brush on Twitter. It's at Gorilla Painter on Facebook. I believe it's at Gorilla Brush on Instagram if you want to follow me. I'll also make one little commercial. So maybe some rust on, as it looks worn, and so some rust on the base or the boots, or I'm not sure what I might have lost the thread of the conversation, or some rust on the buttons maybe. Yeah, we'll see. But a little commercial. So every model I paint nowadays is for sale. Either it's a commission painting or I'm just painting it for fun, but I always offer them for sale. If anybody wants them, she is for sale. If anybody's interested, you can contact me through Facebook or contact me through Twitter or email me, alan@gorillawithabrush.com. If you're at all interested, you can let me know. 25% of the money that I get from painting models, I donate to charity. So you can also maybe feel a little bit better about your purchase that way. But again, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.